about motherhood. 1 minute, you're mom of the year.
I love you, Mommy.
Then the next, not so much. From bath time to bullying, from potty training to puberty, parenting is full of challenges. But one thing is for certain, you are not alone. Welcome to Modern Mom Probs. I'm your host, author, mother, parenting expert, Tara Clark. Join me while we tackle today's modern mom problems. Kristina, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I'm so excited that you're here. Before we jumped on, we talked about all kinds of things, everything from how gorgeous the women are from Croatia to loving linen pants and sweatpants and never ironing again. So I know that this is going to be a very fun conversation. So, God, you are like multi-hyphenate. You have such a phenomenal background. You even once ate hot dogs with Oprah Winfrey. Like, what in the world? What in the world is that? So, Kristina, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, oh gosh, I'm 45 and I feel like I'm 90 because there's so much to fit in. So whenever people ask me, I'm like, which Cliff Notes do I use? I grew up in Croatia. And then during the war, my family came to the U.S. Never planned on really staying here, moving here. It was just for time being, but I ended up staying. So they're all back in Croatia. And then got married young, right out of 3 weeks after I graduated college, and had 2 babies. And then when the babies were 1.5 and 3, I left the marriage, which was the hardest thing. And I felt such shame and all kinds of stuff about it. And now I look back and I'm like, I'm so proud of that girl. Like, she's badass.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, she is.
And yeah, so just went through a really hard time. During that time, I sunk into a depression. I was broke. I was on food stamps. I was sharing a small room with my kids and couldn't even afford a bed. I slept on the floor until a friend gifted me a mattress. And, just felt like my kids deserve better than me. And through all that, experience, is kind of where my passion came from for what I do now. It's whether it's a funny video, whether it's my tour, whether it's a serious video where I'm being vulnerable, it all comes down to, I want to be for others what I needed when I was at my lowest. And so anything I post has to sort of check off that, I needed to laugh a lot and I needed to feel less alone. And I needed someone to say out loud the stuff that I was embarrassed to admit out loud. So that's what I've sort of dedicated my life to now.
No, I love that. I love that you have sort of like a guiding mission with what you do, because for me, when people ask me like, oh, well, Tara, like, tell us more about Modern Mom Probs, I have a similar sort of umbrella. I'd like to say that anything that falls underneath the concept of a modern mom problem, I'm going to talk about it, whether it's funny or whether it's hard or whether it's inspiring. It's all of that. So the listeners may not see it right now, but I'm sort of doing an umbrella. So as long as it falls underneath that umbrella, that's my guiding mission, just like you have your guiding mission. And I love that. And you strike such a beautiful balance of funny and inspiring. It's everything. How do you sort of like walk that line between the two?
I mean, I just stay authentic to what I'm feeling and what I'm going through. Or a lot of times I'm inspired by either, comments that I get on videos or followers that I meet at my tour. During the meet and greets, I've been inspired. So much of my content has come from just talking to someone at a meet and greet one-on-one, and they're whispering to me and they're opening up about the stuff that they're embarrassed or they feel shame about or they've been judged for. And my mind's immediately going, oh my gosh, I got to put something out there that's going to make this woman go, I got nothing to be, you know what I mean? Like, it's just,
you're like, I'm not alone.
So yeah, I mean, I honestly think the only reason I have been able to turn a hobby into a career, it comes down to authenticity. And that might sound really cheesy or whatever to some people, but I think the people that have decided to watch my videos and support me and have been incredible, they all say the same thing. It's always like, it's just authentic, it's real. And that can be really scary at times because you're going to get judged. You're going to get judged no matter, I get hate every day. But if you're authentic, at least you're not like trying to please everyone and fit every box. You're just like, I'm just going to be me. And if you don't like me, I'm cool with that.
And there's plenty of people that do like you, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a line from a Beyonce song. Actually, at that time, it was Destiny's Child, when it was like, there are plenty of people who don't like me, but then there's 10 times more who love me, and I love myself. And I
Yes.
often think of that.
Yeah. I actually just last week or recently, somebody asked me on Instagram, I was doing a Q&A, and somebody asked me, how come you just like, how did you stop caring what other people think? Like, I just want to get to a point where I'm not concerned every time I leave my house, like, what will so-and-so think about what I'm wearing? Or will my mother-in-law judge me or whatever? And it really comes down to that I realized at some point in the last 10 years or less that I have a choice every single day, whether I want to be happy or whether I want to live for somebody else's approval. I literally cannot be both. It's impossible to be completely genuine. I'm not talking about shallow happy. I'm talking genuinely happy, that feeling when you're at peace. And at the same time, be pining for other people's approval. You can't have both. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be dead someday. Do I want to spend my life happy and feeling good? And at the end of the day, feeling proud of myself, not worried about whether other people are proud of me, or whether I want to constantly be like, do they like me? And what do I need to change? And should I do this? And so even now, if I'm tempted to be like, oh, how are those people going to feel or whatever, I just sort of narrow it down to, okay, Kristina, you want to be happy or you want to pine for somebody's approval? Pick one.
Yeah, that's
So
it.
it simplifies it.
It is. And we initially met at Alt Summit. You gave a phenomenal talk about not carrying the weight of others' negativity. And you used the example, the analogy of suitcases. And the crowd was just mesmerized because you're a phenomenal speaker. And everyone was just like hanging on your next word. And they were imagining all of these suitcases that we carry. What inspired you to write that talk? Like, can we like explore that a bit?
So I need visuals. Like, I always have to come up with visuals for myself. Otherwise, every lesson will just get tossed out. And so like I mentioned, when I got divorced, I was judged a lot for that. There were people that did everything they could to make sure that I stayed married because you're never supposed to get divorced, and just felt judged from every angle. And then, just being a young mom and being on food stamps, paying for anybody that's been there, somebody will judge you. Stop mooching off the government. They don't even know my whole story, but they're going to judge me. My kid throwing a tantrum, in public, whatever. We've all been there. And then when I start creating stuff online, well, then of course you're going to constantly be told that you're ugly, that your personality is bad, that you're boring. I mean, I've heard it all.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to go to bed every single night worrying or even replaying for 1 second what so-and-so at the grocery store said to me, or what so-and-so online posted, who, by the way, if I met in real life, I probably wouldn't even respect or want to be friends with, but that's beside the point. And so the visual I came up with is, I knew that most of that stuff, if not all of it, was not really about me. And so I was like, okay, how do I visualize when somebody's handing me their judgment and their hate? And the way I thought of it for myself is, we're all carrying around a bunch of suitcases throughout our life. We got our insecurity suitcase, our to-do list suitcase, our work stress suitcase, our childhood trauma suitcase, our marriage. We've got all these suitcases. And when somebody is judging you, what they're basically saying is they're handing you their suitcase and they're saying, take it. Because they think that the pain is like dodgeball, right? They're going to hand it off to you and it's out of their hands. But that's not how it works. And so I just always, whenever I started to get, from that point when I came up with that, whenever I would get in kind of judgment or hate or whatever, I would literally picture somebody holding a suitcase of their own misery, of everything they're insecure about, everything they're unhappy about, their own life and their own choices, and handing it to me. And I would just go, no, thank you. I'm not your bellhop. I'm not going to pick up anybody. I got plenty of my own suitcases I got to unpack with my therapist. Thank you, Paul. But I am not picking up anybody else's. And so I even sometimes, I think I said during the speech that you're at, I even sometimes will reply when somebody's like, you really are ugly, or you're really whatever. I will just reply, no, thank you. And they get completely confused. They're like, what is she talking about? But in my mind, like, no, thank you. I'm not picking up that.
Yes.
You deal with that. That's not mine to carry.
Yeah, I love that. I actually went home and told my husband about the no thank you. And he's like, that's genius. I was like, I know.
Well, and the thing is, I've had suitcases that I was carrying for decades that were handed to me when I was a kid. And a lot of us, I would say most of us, either had a relative or some other adult in our life, or maybe a bully who said something, handed us the suitcase. And we are now in our 40s, 50s, 60s, and we're still carrying that suitcase like it belongs to us. So, it gives me chills to even think about it, because there was one person in my life that most of my insecurities I can trace back to. And I literally visualize myself just going, boop, no longer. I'm dropping that suitcase. I am done. And I don't know. I don't know if other people are visual, if it will help, but it really helped me.
Yeah, it helped everyone in that crowd. I can honestly tell you, everyone was nodding and shaking their heads and saying, yes, yes, I am up to the gills with all of these suitcases. I cannot carry any more suitcases. So yeah, you just drop them off at the curb and then you just go.
Yep.
Oh, it's so powerful. So you have a new book out.
Yes.
You have a new book. It's called I Can Fix This and Other Lies I've Told Myself While Parenting My Struggling Child.
Yes.
What inspired you to write it?
Okay, so for anyone that's read my first book, Hold On But Don't Hold Still, I get very serious in it, but there's a lot of funny. This one, not much funny. So people are like, oh, I love her comedy. Well, you're not going to find much of that in this one. My oldest son started struggling years ago. We really started seeing it like when he was 13, 14. So I was like, oh, I know what this is. This is normal teenage hormones. I got this. But really, he was in a deep depression, and it just got worse and worse. And at 14, he admitted to me that he had thought about suicide, which any parent that has ever heard that, you know how just life altering that is. The amount of fear and stress and worry that immediately consumes you is just beyond what a human should even be capable of carrying, but somehow we carry. And so we went through this thing together that, I have a rule with my friends and family. I will never mention anything without their full permission. Nothing. I won't even tell you that my daughter had tuna sandwich for lunch if I don't have her permission. I've just been very careful about that. That's why you will rarely see a family photo on my socials, because at least one kid will be like, nope. And so nobody knew we were going through this, and I'm still making videos, and I'm touring at this point. At the time I was touring with a show called Hope and Humor, and I'm standing on stage and thinking, oh my gosh, these people do not even know that I'm the one that needs the hope and humor right now. And I would break down during these random parts of the show that weren't even supposed to be like emotional, because as I was saying these words to other people, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to hear this. I need to tell myself this. So anyway, we went through this awful period. His depression often showed up as anger. Got to a point where I had to call the police on him. He was taken to a psychiatric hospital. He went through residential programs. 9 different psychiatrists. It was a huge nightmare. Just anybody that's gone through it knows. And then when he was already almost 18. I was driving him back from a second residential program, and he was definitely in a better place. His medication was finally adjusted. He had really gone all in therapy. And he said, you know what helped me the most, Mom, is in support groups hearing from other kids my age. Because we kids, when we're struggling, we hear from the mom, and we hear from the dad, and we hear from the teacher and the therapist and the psychiatrist. But when you're talking to a kid your age, you're going to hear it better. And so he's a very private person. He does not post on social media at all or anything. But he said, I'd be willing to do a video with you where we just have a very candid conversation and we talk about the last 2 years, and maybe it'll help another kid to hear from me. And I gave him 7 months to change his mind. And every time I would get a mean comment, I'd be like, okay, but this is what they're going to do. Okay, you see this? This is what and are you, because I was obviously super protective of his mental health, right?
Yes, of course.
Mom, A, I don't care. And B, I'm not going to read the comments. And so gave him 7 months to change his mind. He decided to still do it. And the day before we sat down to film, I said, okay, let's talk about what we're going to cover. And he said, no, we are not having any conversation about this. I don't want any prep. I want to sit down and have a raw conversation with you. And we did. And that video ended up really resonating. The comments broke my heart, because there's so many parents that were like, oh my gosh, you just said all these things out loud that my neighbors don't even know this is happening in my home. And then I started hearing from kids, and it was just this big thing. So eventually my literary agent called me, and she said, this is your second book. And then I sat down with my son and I said, I will not do this without you. So I need your input. Every time I mention your name and I mention you were angry, I need your input. And then he even agreed to write the last chapter. So you hear from a mom going through this hell, and I'm very honest in about all the many mistakes I made. And then the last chapter you hear directly from my son.
How's he doing now?
He's doing well. What I always tell people, and this is how he described it in his chapter, he always says that for him, mental health is like a tug of war. Sometimes he's winning and sometimes he feels like he's losing. And that's what I want people to know. Like, I didn't want to write a book that's like, here's the perfect ending, we're all happy now. Because that's just not real life.
Because that's not true. Yeah.
If you struggle with mental health, you will probably struggle to some extent. There'll be really bad days and there'll be really good days. So my son and I are just always open about the fact that this is what we'll say. He's doing good today. And that's all that matters. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. Today is good.
That's great. That's great. I have so many thoughts rushing through my head, and I'm also trying to hold back tears. So it's a lot of things going on simultaneously in my body and in my nervous system. What were some of the lies that you were telling yourself while you were going through this?
Mm-hmm. So one of the first things, so I used to work because I studied theater in college. And after college, I actually worked at a high school with teenagers. I was an assistant theater director. So when I became a mom, I was like, teenagers, I got this. Because
you're like, I got this.
Yes, because I was so young. I was in my early 20s that these kids felt like they could open up to me. So I had a girl come up and she was pregnant and she hadn't even told her parents. And I had another kid like open up to me about all the bullying, and another kid opened up to me about the divorce that's happening. Like, I had these kids really open up to me. So I was like, I know what teenagers need. And that was the lie that I told myself, because we parents so often assume we know, we got this. We do this a lot, by the way. He was my oldest, but we do this a lot with the younger siblings. Oh, I went through this with the older one. I know. Well, no, you don't, because parenting is not like riding a bike. Just because your first kid might have been a bike and you're like, oh, I got this, I know how to, deal with this. The second one's going to be a tractor. Okay. And you're going to be like, I don't know what's happening.
I don't know how to ride a tractor.
Yes. My youngest is a spaceship. I'm still learning. After 21 years of parenting, I'm still learning how to parent him. So I just came from this place of assumption. I know what's happening. He's a teenager. He needs me to be steady and firm, but also very loving and supportive and encourages authenticity, and everything's going to be great. And then I found out he was depressed. And I was like, I know what we need to do. We're going to get him a therapist and that's going to fix it. And so I write a lot in the first chapter about the importance of coming from a place of curiosity, always. Mm-hmm. And how the most beautiful thing you can do for someone, especially your child, is to stand in awe of their story. And so I was not standing in awe of my son's story. I was just ready to do and fix.
Yeah, you're in fixing mode. You're in solutions mode.
Yes. Which is why the book is called I Can Fix This and Other Lies I Told Myself, right? There were lies about, mother knows best. Well, no, she doesn't. I always thought that being a good mother meant being the leader and my children will follow in my example. And I learned through this experience that my job is to stand alongside them and treat them as the only expert at being themselves. I'm not the expert at being Luca, my son. He's the expert. Mm-hmm. I'm there to learn and listen and then help guide him. And so a lot of those types of lies, also I was lying to myself about every time we saw progress. And I was like, that's it. It's all up from here. And it wasn't. Sometimes it got worse. So yeah, I go through 10 different lies in the book. And one really big one that I want parents to hear was good mothers are selfless. And what happens very often, especially when our kid is struggling, even when our kids aren't struggling, but especially when they're struggling, is we are 100% focused on them and we're not focused on ourselves. And, I grew up where my grandmother would cook this big meal for guests and then she would serve it and she would barely even sit down to eat because she was making sure everybody had.
That's exactly how my grandmother was.
Right. And everybody would praise her, right? And go, wow, what an amazing selfless woman. And finally, I looked at the actual definition for selfless because I'm like, this doesn't sound good to me. And selfless means having no concern for self. How did our society decide to praise and compliment someone having no concern for self. How are parents supposed to keep their sanity if they have no concern for self? How are parents supposed to be a good example of prioritizing your mental health to your children, modeling it, if you have zero concern for self? So I had to learn that me taking care of my own needs, me sometimes even prioritizing me, even when my son is struggling, is not selfish. I need to take care of the most important person in my child's life, and that's me.
Because if he doesn't have you, then,
Yeah.
and not that I would say, like, then what would he do? But
Yeah.
also, like, you need to be in his corner. You said something before, Kristina, that it really struck me because my son is 11. You and I are similar age. And one of the biggest things that I've learned in my motherhood journey is letting my child lead for his needs, for his readiness on things. My husband and I always say that Jack will do things when he's ready. And whether that was from when he was a baby and a toddler to now when he is 11. And so many people are like trying to put the cart before the horse, as you said. It's like, well, I'm going to be the role model and I'm going to lead and my children will follow after. And guess what? I think the biggest takeaway is no, sometimes they're the leader and you're following them because that's how they're able to get to where they need to go ultimately.
Yeah. So I completely agree. I took my oldest son a few years ago out to dinner, just me and him. And I said, I'm going to say something to you and it might sound really cheesy, but if you're cool with it, play along. I said, help me understand what it's like to be you. And then I just sat back. And oh my goodness.
I could almost cry. You're almost going to make me cry just thinking.
The things I learned that day, because when you ask your kid, are you good? How are you feeling? You're going to get the short answers, right? Sometimes they might even open up to you about how they're really feeling. But then there's such a deeper thing to saying, help me understand, what is it actually like to be you? What is it like to wake up in your body? What is it like to face the stress you face? What is it like? And that was incredible because I think for him, it felt empowering because it's like, here's my mom letting me trust myself and be the expert and teach her. And then with my youngest, when he was 9, I did something similar. We were out, just the two of us. And I like that because there's no distraction, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I kind of asked him a similar question. I said, can you walk me through your day from the moment you wake up? Walk me through your whole day. And it was incredible because every once in a while I would stop and go, okay. So you just entered the classroom. How do you feel? Are you tired? Are you stressed? We had this long conversation. I learned things about him I didn't even know. So those are like simple examples of ways we can allow our children to teach us and guide us in what is the best way to parent them.
Yeah, it's so important. I'm sorry. I'm like so verklempt about this because we've had a lot of struggles with my son and he's doing really well right now. Thank goodness we've changed his school. And so it's a totally different routine than it had been when he was going to public school. Thank goodness. And everything you're saying is just resonating with me so much because parents often are in that solutions mode, the fixer mode, where like, oh, are you having a problem with this bully? Let me jump in and fix it. Are you having a problem with this teacher? Let me jump in and fix it. As opposed to them leading. And like I said before, like you following their lead, but also to get into their mind of what it's like to be 11 years old and having struggles with X, Y, and Z. And that is so powerful because then you're coming from a different perspective of not fixer mode, but listener mode, empathy mode.
Yes, because I feel like we're somehow taught as parents that our job is to fix. Our job, there's a problem and our job is to find a solution. And I'm not even saying that means babying your kid or running to talk to the principal if they get in trouble. Even parents who are like, nope, you have to be responsible for your own stuff. Even those parents are still running to some sort of solution, right? And instead of running to fix, when I decided to stop running, which I never liked running in the first place, let's just be honest, and to just sit, I mean, again, to sit in awe of my child's story is so powerful. And now with my kids, and I did not come up with this. I don't know who came up with it, but I'm sure you've heard of it. I will often ask them when they start talking to me, do you want my advice or do you want me just to listen? And 99% of the time, my children will say, I want you to just listen. And when I manage to actually keep my mouth shut, which mothers who are able to keep their mouth shut while they're, especially teenager, is opening up, deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. Okay.
For real.
Like I'm sweating, but I'm keeping my mouth shut. I'm not always successful at it. I'm just going to admit
Yes.
I mess up all the time. But when I'm actually able to shut up and listen, most of the time, if not every time, what happens is the conversation ends. They've opened up 5 minutes later, sometimes a couple hours, they'll come back and go, so what do you think? What advice do you have? Because they felt respected. If I right away was like, well, this is what you need to do, and I think you should talk to your friend, but they don't even feel heard yet. I'm jumping to fix because I think that's what makes me a good mother, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when they really come to me and open up to me is when I give them that respect of, I just want to listen and learn.
Yes. Yes. That is so powerful. Well, there are two things I want to say. One, I recently interviewed a woman who wrote a book called Underestimated: The Wisdom and Power of Teenage Girls. Her name is Chelsea Gooden. And in that book, the main takeaway was approach teenagers without judgment. When you sit down and you're having a conversation with them, do not lead with judgment. And that's very hard, just like you said. So you're doing the right things, Kristina, is what I want you to say, is that like you're right on the right track with that. And then secondly, I feel like that with my husband sometimes too. You know, if I'm coming to him and I just want to, just vent about something and he leads with advice, I've gotten to the point now where I'm saying to him, it's like, I just want to like talk about it. I don't necessarily want to hear the advice, but you're right. I think coming back 5 minutes later when you're ready to receive it makes all the difference.
Yeah. I mean, really, bottom line, whether you're 5 or 75, every human being wants to be heard. Like, I just want somebody to hear me out and try to understand, which is why I think saying to somebody, help me understand what it's like to be you, even in a marriage, or like have your spouse say to your spouse, walk me through your day, is such a gift to both parties. You're learning. And I think one of the best things you can give your child is to teach them to trust themselves. I was not taught to trust myself.
Me neither. I still, at 44, I still don't trust myself sometimes, depending on what it is.
I mean, I write a lot about that in the book, of realizing through trying to help Luca that I'm constantly coming from a place of my own insecurities and my own fear. And I'm bringing my own unhealed parts of myself into this parenting journey, right? Mm-hmm. And just realizing how much what a negative thing it was for me, for my parenting, for Luca, that I did not trust myself. And so that was one of the things I decided once I realized that is I'm going to teach him how to trust himself. And I'm going to teach him that he doesn't need to pine for not just other people's approval, even his mother's approval. I don't want him to live to make his mom proud. Mm-hmm. I want him to live to make himself proud. So I started asking, when he would come for advice, sometimes I would say, well, what do you think you should do? What would make you the most proud? Because now he had to process it. And again, it was another way of saying, Luca, I want you to trust yourself. I want you to trust that you know what the right thing to do in this moment is.
Yeah, that makes all the difference. As I mentioned before, my son started a new school, and it is child-led. It's learner-led. And so their entire program, their entire basis of it is getting the children to trust themselves. And they don't have teachers. They have things called guides. And the guides say, well, what do you think, Jack, about this? What do you think you should do to proceed with this? And so that's when I say that my son is doing so well because he's in a different environment, that's the environment that he's in now. And it has made all the difference. He's not working towards the approval of a teacher or his parents. He's working for the approval of himself.
And that, you bring up a really good point. The fact that he's doing better proves, because this is what whenever I talk about this stuff, there's always a few people who are kind of old school who are like, child-led? No. Parents are the boss. You tell your kid what to do and they need to do it. And we're babying this generation and they're going to be completely incompetent and blah, blah, blah. Okay, here's what I have to say to that. I tried that. Okay. I tried being I know what's best. And, I was raised that way and I was less lenient than that, but these are the rules and I'm going to follow through. And I'm telling you right now, my relationship with my children completely changed. I don't think that my kids would be coming to me so openly telling me, hey, I'm really struggling today, and this is what I'm struggling with. And like so vulnerably telling me everything they're feeling and thinking, if I was still on I'm the boss and you're down here and I'm going to tell you what to do. So what I would say, and this is a big theme in my book, is you can either control or you can connect, but you can't do both. And control, it might make you feel better in the moment because you feel like you're getting stuff done as a good parent, but it will hurt the relationship. Ultimately, it will not lead to progress. If you connect, your child is so much more open to actually listening. Forget even teenagers. I noticed with my youngest, if he feels connected to me, when I ask him, hey, bud, you need to unload the dishwasher, please. He's like, okay. But if I've been the controlling mom that day, that's when I'll actually get pushback and be like, oh, do I have to? When kids feel connected, they are so much more open to actually hear your guidance and your brilliant advice. They're going to shut down if you're constantly trying to control. So that's another thing I remind myself all the time of. Like my oldest son, a few weeks ago, he was really struggling and he came to me and he said, I'm struggling again and this is whatever. And my instinct was control, right? Let's see if we need to change his meds. Let's see if we need to call the therapist. Let's see. And I just had to literally like slap myself internally and be like, stop it. And just decide to connect and just sit with them. And it was amazing.
Yeah, that's it. There's magic in that connection.
Yeah.
No.
And it's not bad parenting. It's not spoiling your kid. No, you're actually building something so much stronger where they will listen to, and you are helping their self-esteem and their mental health so much.
So much. I always tell people that when you're laying that foundation of connection, it will reap benefits their entire lives.
Yeah. And I always give people this example too. My mother-in-law lives less than a mile away from my house. When some of my friends hear that, they cringe. My mother-in-law and I are extremely close. I see her almost every day. Okay.
Wow.
The reason we are so close, and this is no credit to me. Okay. The reason we are so close is because this woman has not once judged me. She has not once tried to control me. I parent very differently than she did. We both realize that. She has never told me that I should do it the way she did it. She always says, it's your kids. You got to parent how you want to parent. I mean, she is just so respectful and kind. First time I met her, do you have another minute?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I can tell stories. First time I met her, I immediately, like within a few hours of meeting her, I was dating my, husband at the time. And I said, I just want to talk to mom. If my son came to me one day and he said, hey, I met a girl I'm in love with and she's divorced and she's got 2 little kids and she's dealt with a lot of mental health struggles and she's completely broke. She's on food stamps and, just a list. That probably would not be my ideal situation. I'd have some concerns. So if you have any concerns, bring them. There's nothing out of line that you will say to me. I want us to be open. And immediately she responded. She's like, and I want you to know that I trust my son and I've never seen him this happy. And if you marry him someday, and I hope you do, those kids of yours will be my grandchildren and I will treat them as my own. So immediately, right? From the moment she met me, what did she do? She didn't try to control. She could have easily responded to me and gone, well, I do have concerns about this and I think you should do this and he should do this. She just decided to connect and to accept me and to take any preconceived ideas about who's good enough for her son or what the situation, she just to ditch all of that and to connect with me. And that is the power you will have. If you connect with your children, you're going to end up having the relationship with them that I have with my mother-in-law now as an adult, right?
Yes.
I call her for advice all the time. Why? Because she's never given unsolicited advice. So I want to go to her. If you want your kids to come to you, stop trying to control them.
That's it. That is it, Kristina. Gosh, you are good. You're going on tour.
I am. Yes.
Tell me about that.
So this is my second. So I did Hope and Humor. I toured with that. We did like over 50 cities a few years ago. And now the show is called Lies I Told Myself, which is kind of based on the subtitle. And there's a lot of honest mental health stuff in there, but there's also a lot of funny because that's what I always need. That's medicine to me. I always say how walking through life without humor is like trying to eat soup with a fork. Like you're going to miss out on a lot of good stuff. So yeah, I'm excited because I feel like we should talk about mental health more openly, but we gotta be able to laugh at our own craziness and the mess we're living through.
Yeah, 100%, which actually leads me to my next question, because I asked this of all of my guests. What do you think is the biggest modern mom problem out there right now?
The stupid abusive pressures. I mean, I genuinely believe that there would be less depressed moms, less mental health struggles, less kids who are growing up in homes that are just chaotic and stressful and have that kind of energy if people would just mind their own motherhood. Just everybody mind your own freaking motherhood. Unless it's actually being abused or neglected, I don't care if you think people should breastfeed or not breastfeed or have a bedtime for their kid at this time or this limit on screen. Mind your motherhood, people. There's so much pressure. Social media doesn't help. I absolutely love the accounts that are like, this is my mess. This is my real. Because nobody's life is perfect. And I think if people would just back off, if everybody would just stop judging, stop putting pressure on moms. By the way, nobody puts that kind of pressure on dads. My husband has never been asked, and how stupid would this question sound asked to a man? Do you ever feel guilty having a job? Can you imagine a man being asked that? Because you're a dad. No. You feel guilty. Like just stupid stuff like that. My husband, when he's on a work trip, he never gets asked, oh, who's babysitting the kids? Is your wife babysitting the kids? That doesn't even make sense, right?
It doesn't even make sense. But when you go on tour, I'm sure someone says that to you.
Yeah, my favorite one is, does your husband help? No, he doesn't help. He parents. Like, would somebody ever ask my husband, does your wife help you raise your own children? It sounds crazy.
It sounds bananas.
The biggest problem is just the stupid, unnecessary pressure that is literally, it's not even, it's more than annoying. It is actually hurting people and hurting families.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great answer. And you would like to know that that is a common theme. I know I ask it every episode, and now I'm just starting to see these recurrent themes. Kristina, where can everyone find you online, and where can we buy your books?
The books are available everywhere books are sold, and you can find me at Kristina with a K, last name Kuzmic.
I love it. And your videos are the perfect balance of funny and inspiring and sweet. You have hope, you have humor, you have videos like when someone asks me how old I am, which I'm really loving that series right now because I'm 44, and you're hitting the nail on the head on all of those things. So everyone, go follow Kristina, check out her books, check out her tour, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Modern Mom Probs. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive in today's problem with me, your host, Tara Clark. Join me next time when I'll be interviewing another great guest and tackling another modern mom problem. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review and a rating. As always, you could head over to Modern Mom Probs on Instagram and give me a follow, or check out my book, Modern Mom Probs, A Survival Guide for 21st Century Mothers, available online wherever books are sold. Well, that's it for today. See you next time, folks.